Vivian took 6 of our top product pages. She added FAQs to the bottom, another way to signal structure on a page. Then she added schema, which you see on the right, to those FAQs. In 2 weeks, those 6 pages drove more than half of our incremental citations as webflow.com. We have thousands of pages. Those 6 drove more than half, and they got 24% more traffic organically. In 2 weeks, you can have a material impact quickly.
Hello, fellow marketers, leaders, and listeners. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Call to Action. I'm Janet, CEO of Intel and host of this show. In each Call to Action episode, we analyze, discuss the latest trends, tactics, hot takes in B2B marketing industry. And we're going to conclude the episode with one call to action that you can take back to your team, incorporate that. I think there'll be more than one though, because we have a very special guest today. Guy Yalif of Webflow. Very excited for him to be on this episode today. And of course, I am joined by my co-host of Call to Action, Tucker, Intel's Director of Marketing Services and Strategy. So as I mentioned, very special guest, Guy Yalif is here. He is the Chief Evangelist of Webflow. So do you want to say a quick hello, Guy? You can jump in, let everyone know you're here.
Howdy, y'all. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we met Guy in person. We've been following him. If you've seen him online, he is one of the leading voices of answer engine optimization, AEO, and works at Webflow, has a very seasoned career in marketing. So he's really particularly spearheading the company's AEO initiatives, making sure that, guiding the industry as a whole, honestly. I think a lot of people are looking to Guy and understanding what he and his team are doing to optimize and uplevel Webflow's website and those of their customers. Intel's a customer. We use Webflow ourselves, so we're excited to share what we're seeing as well. And yeah, most notably, I would say, fellow entrepreneur, but Guy co-founded and was the CEO of Intellimize. It's an AI-driven website personalization and conversion rate optimization platform. He started back in 2014, and then they were acquired by Webflow in April 2024. So big kudos, Guy. That's extremely impressive. So we're really excited to have you and hear all your knowledge and take a look at the future and just get into it today.
Grateful to be able to share, grateful to be able to learn together in this rapidly evolving space, and feel very privileged to have worked and continue working with a great group of human beings.
That's what it's all about. So in this episode, we're going to cover the following topics. So the evolution of SEO to AEO. I think we've all kind of landed that this is the term, the acronym to use. We've been saying AEO. Webflow's model and how they're thinking about this, some frameworks that they put in place that you can follow, and Intel's following and advising to our clients and are seeing success with it. And we really want to spend some time today talking about your website's architecture and the optimizations you can make, what you should prioritize, what's really working. I think what we're seeing too is we're all in this experimentation mode and wanting to share that forward. And then finally, we definitely want to cover, how you can track and report on the success of this. And I think finally, just the overall goal today is I personally wanted to strip away a little bit of the fear mongering that you're seeing when you doom scroll LinkedIn, and also just give some tactics that we can all implement today. So yeah, let's get into it, guys. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's dive in. Yeah, so excited to have you here, Guy. And as Janet said, I think we saw you at Inbound. You talked all about AEO, and we're really excited to kind of deep dive and nerd out with you today. And I think Janet just teed you up really well with a little bit of a background for you, Guy. But I think before we really dive into our deep dive, can you just give our listeners and watchers just a brief snapshot of your background and kind of your journey that led you to Chief Evangelist at Webflow?
I'd be happy to briefly share. I was an aerospace engineer who spent half of college coding AI to design airplanes and made the typical straight line to CMO, right? That's how one does. I spent 10 years having the privilege of building and leading product teams, another 10 years building and leading marketing teams. 15 of those 20 were in ad tech. And some of the inspiration for the AI website personalization company Intellimize came from how programmatic ads work. And then 10 years ago, had the privilege of co-founding and CEOing Intellimise. And Chief Evangelist is the answer to the question of, okay, we acquired this company, we have a CMO, we have a CEO, what do we do with this human? And it's a made up role that gives me the privilege of spending basically all my time out in market, talking with fellow marketing leaders, understanding what's coming up for them and hearing, oh, AEO came up a lot. Now, of course, that's like, duh. And then going to have the privilege of investing a bunch of time to go up this learning curve like this on that and AI overall in this rapidly evolving market where we're all learning together.
Yeah, amazing. Love it. And I love the line from aerospace engineer into CMO. What a beautiful natural line. And probably, I feel like that might lend itself to just more like efficiency and organization than maybe the average even CMO brings. So that's awesome.
And handling all the ups and downs.
Oh, I see what you did there.
There you go. There you go.
In fairness, like roll back the clock 50 years in the, if I can, stereotype the Mad Men age, I could never have been a CMO. But the more data-driven, logically driven CMO is, we all know it's a thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the place for you. So cool. Oh, awesome.
Excellent. So in call to action, we like to orient our audience, give some updates, share some data research that we're seeing, and just kind of help set the stage of like, this is where we're at, and here are some forecasts that are coming. And then we'll really like kind of get a little bit deeper what you guys are seeing at Webflow for your clients, what even Intel's seeing. So I'm going to kick us off. This is particularly for Americans. SparkToro did a massive report on this, and they're tracking a lot of this as well. And they've been kind of at the forefront of seeing these changes. And I don't think anyone listening probably is too surprised, but majority, the 58.5% of searches on Google particularly ended up with a 0-click search. And what that means is that when someone searched for it, they received their answer right away within Google. So unfortunately, what we're seeing from that is that you're not getting as much. I think the bottom line, as we all know, is like, we're not getting as much traffic to our website. And like, why is that? What's happening? And what is that impact? It's just kind of like further illustrate the point a little bit. This isn't even just happening on like Google. It's happening on a majority of channels and websites, especially on social media. This was an interesting one from, actually, this is 2020 and 2024 to 2025. Buffer did a report as well, because X, formerly known as Twitter, they opened up their algorithm. They noticed that folks who have a link in their posts they're not getting as much engagement. So this is that green line at the bottom. It's pretty much like a straight no growth there. So we're seeing it in a variety of places. And I think, of course, people are obviously concerned. You invest a lot in your website, and you want to make sure that you're bringing in folks, of course, customers. At the end of the day, you want to grow your business. And then I also found another recent report from SEMrush where they were forecasting here that projected annual visitors to a website is the main source, as you can see here. So the total, it's kind of running a little flat, but then there's a blue line here. Traditional organic search is what it represents. It's projected to keep going down from 2025, 2026. They're just projecting out to 2029. So really the next half of this decade. However, this red line, reddish pink line, is the LLMs, including Google AI. We're seeing this increase. So it's actually kind of cool. You could, at the point of the chart, they kind of, they're no longer two ships passing in the night. They are like front and center on the battlefields there. But of course, we're seeing increased traffic and folks finding your brand and your company and your products by searching through LLMs such as Google AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, all the friends. So with that, I think you're also seeing this, and you've kind of pulled in some data just to kind of set the stage. Like, unfortunately, like this is just a thing. It's the truth. There's just less organic traffic. We'd love to kind of hear your perspective and what you're seeing as well, Guy, on this.
It's completely aligned with what you're seeing, Janet. And, I saw that same SEMrush study. And I think in having the privilege of talking to hundreds of CMOs every quarter, it looks just like that chart, that there's very little traffic from LLMs, but it is growing rapidly. And to Bain's study here, traffic is going down some now. Not the headline grabbing 90%, but the 10, 15, 20, 25%. We're absolutely hearing that routinely. But there's a silver lining to it. That LLM
We
traffic,
love silver linings.
Yes.
Tell us, please. Give it to us immediately.
This one is a good one. The folks who are coming from LLMs, they're further down the funnel. They are converting better. To use Webflow's data, last summer, 8% of our self-serve signups came from LLMs. That traffic converted 6 times better than unbranded SEO, which I think is the fair comparison. That's not 6%, that's 6 times better. Ahrefs and SEMrush found that to be somewhere between 4x and 23x. And I have not talked to a single CMO who didn't say, hey, yeah, it's much more qualified traffic. At the same time, these answer engines, like Google, we want to go to them to help drive our revenue, but they also impact our brands because they're reformulating our stories. They are not taking our carefully differentiated, crafted stories. They often talk about us as a series of features and miss our value prop entirely. Or it's normal for them to really confidently get it wrong or not mention us entirely. And so I invite all of us to see AEO as both threat and opportunity to both parts of our jobs as marketers, to build brands and drive revenue. And on the opportunity side, I see a lot of, I'm curious if both of you feel the same, a lot of parallels to the early days of search, the late 90s, the early 00s with Google, in that it is early days in a new medium, which creates opportunity. You think about how hard we all fight for like one notch, one ranking, a number up in ranking in search results. In LLMs, as an example, 73% of Google's first page results have metadata to explain the structure of the site called schema. Many folks are probably familiar with it. Okay, so you think everybody's doing it? No, 88% of sites don't have schema on them. It is so early. And by the way, if you do it, not only are you more likely to be on the first page, 42% higher citation rate from LLMs when you put that structured data there. So there's plenty of opportunity. And yet we all, as leaders, have the chance and frankly, the need to go lead. We, Webflow, surveyed 400 marketers. 93% of the leaders, 91% of the practitioners said, AEO, it's going to be really important to my business, like the overall business, not just marketing over the next couple of years. Then we asked the practitioners, hey, do you know what AEO is? And only 25% of them said, I really understand it fully. And so there's so much opportunity in this early new medium to help lead, to help raise everybody's AI and AEO fluency and education bar, which then creates additional opportunity that I'd love to hear your take on next, because we all have a lot of work to do that lands over different timelines on AEO.
Right, exactly. Yeah, just to reiterate what you were just saying, and I feel like we need to like dig in, we need to like click back a few steps before we go forward, because you just said a ton of stuff that I think I could just tell Tucker's like, I have 15 more questions that I even plan to ask. But yeah, just to like layer on, I find it really interesting. It's like everyone's talking about it, you're seeing all of it, but what you were just saying, guys, that folks are, there's this disconnect of like, we know we need to do this, but we have no idea where to begin, how to begin. So we're going to cover some of that today, of course. We'll get there, people. But I was really, I saw that. So it's really cool to see how you guys already did your own survey. That was from your own survey. And there's other surveys happening. I found this one here. Scribewise did one. And it was in also, I think they did it in September to November of last year, 2025. And yeah, in more than 3 months or less than 6 months, 54%, so half of marketers that they surveyed, they're planning to fully implement a strategy. So I'm kind of curious what their strategy is going to include. Hopefully they take some notes from today and all the things that you guys are seeing, Guy. But that's a pretty massive amount of people. But back to what you were just saying, like there's definitely still a little bit of this disconnect. I think people are saying that they want to do it, but they really just don't know where to begin, what actually moves the needle. And there's just let's be honest, marketers have so much pressure to immediately show results and a response. And like, this is all an experimentation. I think, even if you're saying you're an expert, or people who are like, oh, we know all the things, like, we're going to share some ideas. Like, we don't know everything. I will not claim that I know much at all. I mean, I do know things, we've seen stuff, but we're just sharing what we're learning. And that's really what it's all about. There's not some of it's definitive, but a lot of it is just really understanding how you customize and personalize this, especially to your audience. Like, that's really what it comes down to. It's not just about the robots, it's about the humans and how we're working with them and communicating and helping them.
To your point on the timeline slide, like, when was the last time anything in marketing had pretty much half the world doing it in the next 6 months?
When maybe when like LinkedIn hit
came out,
like LinkedIn Enterprise, and I don't know. Like, honestly, probably the .com boom, really. Like, but folks would do the internet, like the when they're like, hey, we need a website, there's this thing called the internet. That's probably what it is.
Yeah. And so, to your point, like, SEO was a board level issue for several years, and now it's a board level issue if you're in a traffic arbitrage business or that channel is just going south. Right. AEO sure has come up in our boardroom and many other boardrooms that I know of as a board level issue. And I, in my humble opinion, it will for several quarters, maybe a couple of years. And so this is something tied to the point of half of everybody doing something about it in the next 6 months. That is, we hope we can share some actionable learnings from today. And exactly to what you said, Janet, like, the stuff, I'll just speak for mine. I think it probably applies to yours too. This is thoughtful, well-researched, considered guess, because none of us really know. We're doing the work, sharing the latest, but it's all evolving very quickly.
As with almost everything in marketing, Guy, right? Like, thoughtful, consider research, probably going to work. But then I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes things are always a little different than what I expect. But certainly a lot of amazing, thoughtful data in here. And I've already seen all the data in this whole presentation, Guy, but you got me over here. I'm writing notes. I'm like furiously, like, this is blowing my mind. Like, so this is awesome.
And I'm writing notes from the ones, Janet, you were sharing, Tucker.
Right? Yeah, it's great. So yeah, to go back on a couple things, Guy, because you touched on so many things, including the phrase, I think you said AEO fluency bar, which let's raise that. I love that. And that's what we're here to do, right? So I think to go back to even one of the first points you made, so organic traffic down, but when people come, or people coming from AI, that conversion rates are higher. I have some theories on that, but I would love your thoughtful, educated guess as to why that is. Like, why are people who are coming from AI channels, why is that conversion so much higher? Do you have any sense on why that is?
My opinion is the simplest explanation is that they're just further down the funnel.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're having multi-step conversations, because those conversations are richer. When we all learned to speak Google, our average query was 4 words long. The average query in LLMs right now is 23 words long and lengthening. And that's one query. We tend to go back and forth before we jump off somewhere. And so as we're going through LLMs, we tend to be able to jump through more of the journey before we ever reach the site. Right. Does that land for you? Were you thinking about it the same way or differently?
That's kind of what I was thinking too. And I didn't want to like provide like a leading indicator, but that's kind of my sense too. They're having interactions on the AI platform, whether that's Google or ChatGPT or whatever, to learn more. And so by the time they're reaching your website, they're already, as you say, deeper down the funnel and are primed. They know a lot more about you by the time they get there. So that learning that used to happen on the website is happening more in the AI platform first, so that by the time they get there, they know more and they're more likely to convert, which sounds like is what you're saying too.
By the way, I've then heard some folks say, got it. So you should only put MOFU or BOFU, like middle or bottom of funnel content on your website. I'm glad to see you shaking your head, Janet. I totally disagree as well.
No.
I'm like, where is for a couple of reasons. Right. One, the LLMs need the fodder, right? They need the content, and
they need as much data as possible.
Right. Say that again.
They need as much data as possible.
Totally. And that tofu content, the best place for them to get it is your site, 1. And 2, folks are going to want to hear your story told your way forever, especially for considered purchases. And that is tofu content. And so I think there are, if you only put mofu bofu content on your site, you are going to hurt yourself, even though a bunch of the tofu content is likely to be consumed elsewhere.
I think that's so important, because I feel like people, as you're saying, who might hear this right away and be like, forget all the brand stuff. Like, we don't, but it's like, no, hold on. Like, make sure you still get that in there. So yeah. Oh, so important. I am curious to know too, a little more, and we may be getting into this shortly, Guy, but when we talk about schema too, just kind of what are we talking about when we talk about schema, because you mentioned metadata, which you used to add for SEO, but kind of curious about like, what does schema mean today, and how might that differ from the, metadata of the past that we used to add just for SEO? So yeah, would love to hear a little bit about that too.
Awesome question. I think it is the same mental model, just as you're describing. Metadata, to be precise, right? Stuff that the machine will see, but the human will not. That we've been doing for a long time, right? Exactly as you said, we've been doing it in title and description tags for search. Those that are B2C among us have probably been doing it with Open Graph, with Facebook, and there are others that we've been doing for a long time. A few startups, Google, Bing, Yahoo, Yandex, came together along with some others, I think it was half a dozen years ago, and made up another more descriptive, fuller language. The made up name for that was schema. And so you can say, hey, here's an events page, here's a product page, here's a bio page, here's a company page. And there are hundreds of them. If you already have a Google Knowledge Graph entry, you almost certainly have schema on your site. And it is basically a way to share the structure and meaning of your site content with a bot that is crawling your site.
Okay, super helpful. And yeah, it sounds like, I feel like a lot of this, and certainly where I'm coming from is kind of almost the non-AEO expert, especially compared to you two, is like, where should one start? And it sounds like looking at your schema, do you have it? Is it on your website? And are you making sure that that's there? Because as you shared with that wild stat of, was it 88% of first pages have schema on it? So yeah, that sounds like a really, really important place to start.
But there's more to it than just the schema, right? I think that's like an easy, because there's a guideline there. It's a little easy for people to follow. But yeah, I'm excited to kind of dig into some of that technical aspect of it as we're pulling the thread on, for sure. So I have a spicy question. I think this might lead into how you're thinking about it, Guy, but like, taking back to what we were just saying, like, everyone knows that there's just less traffic. It's harder to capture kind of this inbound interest to people coming, what's called, like your owned channels, such as a website. So like, why should a company invest in its website? And when they're thinking about how they're doing this, like, what should they prioritize? Where should they focus? Because I think that's a big, people are like, you were saying like, okay, let's not create any top of funnel. I think what we can also hear is like something like, whatever about the website, like, don't even worry about it. But it's actually still very important. So I'd love to hear some of your perspective on that, and then how you guys are thinking of that, or just kind of breaking that down into somewhat of a framework that we could potentially dig into, which you are going to share on this episode.
We think that websites have to serve two audiences, which, to Tucker's question, they have been for a while, but it's even more so, where they need to be visually engaging, emotionally evocative, attention grabbing from humans, and clearly communicating concise data and information to LLMs and other bots so that they can go promulgate that elsewhere. Fundamentally, they need to go do those two things. To your point, we hear some people saying, then why would I ever invest in my website anymore? And I genuinely believe, not because I work for Webflow, websites aren't going anywhere. They do need to serve both of these audiences. Folks who say, hey, they've never served bots before, it's not true, right? We have been doing metadata for a while, but we need to be more thoughtful about it now. And they're not going anywhere because they are the best source of data for the bots, for the LLMs and search bots, right? That's the single best place for them to get data. And it is the place for you to get your messages out there. And two, I still believe, as we talked about earlier, that especially for considered purchases, people are going to want to hear your story told your way forever. And there are times when people will, I find this myself, I'm like, this is really important to me. I appreciate that the LLM did all this amazing, incredible, never been done before synthesis, but I need to be certain this is accurate. Probabilistic doesn't work for me. I need to know this, and then I'll go check.
And you want to know who too, like, okay, who's part of this company? Like, who's behind this? What's the team? Like, who would I be working with if I hire them? Or what would that experience of using their product actually be? Like, the LLM's not going to give you that level of detail necessarily. Like, it's going to give you the facts, but I wholeheartedly agree. Go to the website, do further research yourself for that emotional connection.
Yeah, I think it is headline grabbing to say website is dead, SEO is dead. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's like the fear mongering stuff, right? Yeah, everyone just needs like one. It is, yeah. But are they actually going to click? Probably not.
Yeah, it's less about, zero click is taking over everything and organic traffic is dying, but more like the landscape is changing and it's you need to adapt.
And I think the zero click that you talked about earlier, Janet, is a great thing to bring up, Tucker, because like zero click has been going up for as long as Google's been doing search. It has been slowly rising for a long time. And so
even without
I feel like
AI,
some folks frame it as, oh, now it's 60%. Oh my God. And it's like, well, no, because last year it was like 58 and the year before it was 55 and the year before, those may not be the exact numbers, but that trend has been going on for a long time.
Yeah. Totally. LinkedIn has wanted you to stay on its platform even prior to like the AI boom.
Claiming money.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. That's a great point.
So I would love to shift us like into the how if we can. So if you want to share how Webflow's approach is thinking about this, a bit of a framework that we can orient our audience around. And then, we can just start to kind of share some of those tactical things that we're seeing. You already mentioned the schema, creating a range of content, but would love for you to talk us through this, Guy, of just how Webflow and how you and your team are recommending to folks and marketers and, website teams and pretty much everyone in the company what they should be prioritizing.
We humbly suggest that folks think about the expansion from SEO to AEO, and pause for a second because I do mean expansion. I think good AEO is close to what good SEO always should have been, like genuinely valuable original content that helps your prospect move through the funnel. That gets rewarded, right? Folks are saying sometimes, hey, the whole world has changed. Yes, there are obviously huge changes, but the core job of giving somebody valuable information that helps them move through the funnel, that has not changed, to get them to your site and to go buy stuff. So expanding from AEO to SEO, we invite people to think about it in 4 categories: what you do with your content, what you do technically, how you build authority, and how you measure it all. And in content, the core shift is from topics being clusters of keywords to topics now becoming clusters of questions. The questions your prospects are actually asking in the funnel. And, one good, them, but you can additionally learn more of them by running an LLM over your sales call recordings, running an LLM over your sales and support emails, going to Google and looking at people also asked and more, and picking, just like you picked and prioritized keywords, doing the same for questions, and then answering them, coming up with content that answers them. And as you mature, answer them throughout the funnel, because as we all know, the questions are different, even if it's the same topic, and answering them with depth, not for the sake of just being longer, but for the sake of having, given that these are 23 word long and on average queries, more opportunities to find similarity with the question itself. The like super taily feature detail thing that may or may not have been rewarded in SEO, it's likely to be rewarded, or more likely to be rewarded in AEO. And you need to keep updating that content regularly. Like, this content machine is voracious. In fact, ChatGPT, if you go to the next slide, 95% of the sources they cite were updated in the last 10 months. The content machine is very hungry. Our friends at Graphite analyzed a bunch of data and saw, hey, 85% of all AI citations in Google are human or human plus a little AI. So you've got to create a lot and you need a human doing it. Like, it's a hungry machine. But when you do it, it works really well. If you go to the next slide, we partnered with AirOps, and by we, I mean Vivian Huang, who runs our AEO SEO team, and dramatically increased the speed of content refreshes. 5x. Okay. What impact did that have? In 2 months, those pages got 42% more traffic organically, and that traffic converted 14% better. Like, we're all used to that being a trade-off, right? You get more traffic, it converts worse. Here, you put in more energy and you're getting both for the time being. That it'll reach steady state. We'll be back to the normal trade-off. But the impact can be very meaningful. And the last thing to share, and then I'm curious your take on this, is you also want this to be personalized. You want to be showing the right content to people. And so as you're building this large library, making sure you're showing the right things to people is a really important, highest level of maturity thing to do. How does this land for you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely seeing this. I think what we're not seeing is folks in brands and content teams and marketing actually updating and having it in their budget and resourcing to keep content, fresh. Like, they're just publishing it, but they're not going back and updating the content, checking that it's like technically accurate. We're helping clients like audit their sites, doing this level of auditing on their the content and on the technical end. And there's a lot of, especially if I want to put it in the context of like blog articles. And what's interesting when you're saying about this freshness is you actually can, when you update the content too, you also want to make sure it's telling the machines, the LLMs, when you updated it. And you can do that through your sitemap. But we're seeing a lot how there's a lot, the structure is being read as very out of date. There's like very low signaling that this is even happening. So there needs to be this clear connection between not just updating the content, but making sure that that's coming over in the back end as well. So that's what we've been advising and seeing a lot of if you're going to put in a ton of effort to update the actual content, make sure that that's actually resonating on the technical side too, with change frequencies, even the priorities of the pages. And a lot of the time I find visually clients, the way that their blog is laid out or the content of their site and their website pages visually to the user, it looks like there's a lot of authority over different topics. But so to the human, it's oh, this, when I'm navigating your site, this makes sense. You guys, have these range of expertise, but to the LLM and even just the robots, they don't see any of it. That's what's coming up a lot. We're seeing a lot of, so we're having to make sure that we're looking okay, does this content strategy, this content, these blog articles, everything they're producing, is it actually structurally working? Because it's true when we do content refreshes with clients and advise that, and they definitely see these lifts. So it's great to see this validation here as well, that this is something to invest in and make sure that you're prioritizing and having the resourcing for it, because you're going to see some great lifts in your performance.
To one of the things you said, Janet, this whole rubric is based on SEO being well executed already. To my surprise, 25% of Google's first page results don't have SEO metadata on them. And I know it was popular and still is for a long time to say, hey, here are the 500 things you need to do for SEO, in particular technical SEO. And in my humble opinion, very few of them matter. If your site has broken links or you don't have SEO metadata on every page, go do that first. Don't spend any on this. You'll get more juice for the squeeze there, in part because the LLMs, yes, they're trained in depth, but then they go basically almost every query now, maybe that'll change over time, and they run a search or multiple searches and then use that as context RAG to go decide, synthesize an answer. And so if your SEO is not working, your AEO is not going to work. In fact, 52% of Google's AI citations rank on the first page in the top 10. So being good at SEO clearly helps on AEO. It's not required, but that's the place to start. Sorry, I kept going there. Does that resonate for you, Janet?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there's just what you're saying, just the concept of a wasted crawl budget still is important. That's the search engine spend a lot of time. They don't, I would frame it as they're lazy. Almost they do a lot of work, but they want it to be almost the path of least resistance. So make it easy for them to find the information. So if you have, low priority pages, broken links, just irrelevant content connected or not connected, you're just making it difficult to do their job. So they're just going to kind of be like, okay, there's nothing here, even though you spent a ton of time. That's kind of how I think about it. It's just, you're just not setting them up to just be able to do their job well. It's almost kind of like a human. It's like, are you giving them what they need to be successful? No. Okay. Well, then we need to look at that and make sure it's structured in the way that they can do their job.
That's where I was going with this too, Janet. I think, Guy, to hear you say like broken links, metadata. You need 2 places to start with technical AEO. Those are your places. But what you're saying too, Janet, I was just starting to have that same train of thought of like, I always think so much of our work is with people, and people are so busy with their days. They're doing different things. And I always like say to our team, hey, make it so easy for the person you're working with to be able to do their job. Spoon feed them the information they need to do it. But I'm realizing, I feel like based on what both Guy and Janet, you're both saying, it's like, do the same thing for the LLM. Spoon feed the LLM what it needs to know, so it can be like, oh, that is the page I should crawl and the information to take out. And when we say things like metadata, or I think we'll even get into the content and some of the things you could do to answer the questions, have a table of contents, that sort of thing. There are really ways to signpost to the LLM, hey, pick me. This is the information you want. You want to pull from here. But I think that's a really helpful way to think about it. So yeah, really.
Yeah. So what are some, go on, Guy? I'm curious. Like, I feel like there's probably like some other additional things, that we can optimize or start to add in or make sure is prioritized on a site. And that's like, doesn't feel like a crazy thing to do, like you don't have to scrap everything.
Couldn't agree with you more. It is building on top of, and to your point about them being lazy, I think it is, in their economic interest, because to your point, it's hugely costly to do all these crawls. And so it's in your self-interest to make it super easy for them, to spoon feed it for them, to pretend as if they are lazy, because they're not. They're making rational choices on like, how do I balance quality with how hard it is to crawl this thing? For example, when we talk authority, we'll talk about, YouTube being a good place to be mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
They're not actually going to go crawl the video. They're going to crawl the transcript because that's a lot cheaper to crawl. Tucker, to your point about table of contents, I think that, the core of the technical category is making it easy for them, giving them signals about structure and meaning of content. Mm-hmm. And one of the easiest places to do that is in your content itself. And so we, Vivian, experimented with, hey, let's go put an auto-generated table of contents based on our, H1, H2, H3 on our blog posts. Not statistically significant, but she tried it on a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. In 4 weeks, she got 59% more traffic from LLMs and 23% more traffic from Google, from SEO. Like, what's not to love? You can also put the takeaway in the headline. You could have one well-structured H1, H2, H3 that talk about what's coming. Flipping to metadata, you can have one H1 and then hierarchically structured H2, H3, H4. In the content, you could use bulleted lists, many different ways to signal structure. Mm. If you had to pick one, if your links aren't broken and you've got metadata, I would, on the next slide, suggest schema. That it's hard to overemphasize how valuable that is to LLMs. One example, Vivian took 6 of our top product pages. She added FAQs to the bottom, another way to signal structure on a page. Then she added schema, which you see on the right, to those FAQs. In 2 weeks, those 6 pages drove more than half of our incremental citations as webflow.com. We have thousands of pages. Those 6 drove more than half, and they got 24% more traffic organically. In 2 weeks, you can have a material impact quickly.
Congrats. That's pretty impressive. I gotta throw our hat in the ring here in this conversation just to validate this, because we have seen similar change actually. So as I mentioned, Intel, our site's on Webflow, and for several years we've been on Webflow, and we noticed, so David, our co-founder and COO, he was searching on, Gemini, ChatGPT, and was like, hey, I can't find us for these like pretty specific key queries that I'm asking. Like, let's go dig into why. And then we realized like there were just some really simple things that we did not have Even just telling the LLMs to like be like, hey, this is a site that you can get information from was like step one. And then we did add in schema and FAQs. We updated, actually first what we did is we updated our services pages and we created really technical, like very niche targeted pages for a couple industries and things that we do. And we added a schema, we added FAQs to that. And those pages are now some of our top inbound, where we get our top inbound leads. It's like, it has like quadrupled actually in how many inbound leads we're receiving. Are all of them highest quality? Are they all converting? No, but do they actually, when they reach out to us from coming from a ChatGPT or Gemini, a lot of them are coming from ChatGPT. I think a majority of people are using like the free version. We are finding that when they come to our site, we reach back out to them, they're actually want to get on a call with us like immediately. Like they were already like, yeah, I'm ready to talk. Like, let's talk about this and the things you guys do. So it's working, which is incredible. I mean, we still have some work to do. We did like the Webflow AEO assessment that you have available. And there's still some stuff that, we need to update and make sure it's always a work in progress. But we saw that we did that in, it was actually a little bit over a year ago that we did that. It was the end of 2024 into 2025. And then we started like in kind of throughout like last year, we were making optimizations and we were seeing some quick change, which was incredible.
Yeah. Can confirm. To me, it felt like magic. Like we made this update.
Tucker was like, thank you for making my job a little easier.
Oh, look at all these inbound, sales calls that are coming in, and it was all AI search and asking people, and people are saying, one guy said, I did deep research and you guys on AI on ChatGPT and you guys kept coming up. So it was amazing, and it really felt like turning on a switch.
It almost like he was trying not to, he was getting annoyed that we kept coming up, that we were the only, the only answer, which is funny.
Yeah. Would it be okay? Could we go back to that slide? Because I feel like, again, the non-AEO technical marketer compared to you guys here in schema. And I feel like for anyone watching this, it's like, if you want to know where to start, I feel like this is screenshot this is the page, right? Because so what we're looking at over here on the right side, Guy, if I'm understanding, that is like a screenshot of the actual schema that you guys added. Am I understanding that right?
That's exactly right. This is on the right, the metadata that's on the page, and you see that highlighted part. And if you look just at the beginning of the lines, you see it's the type. It's like, this is a question. What's the name of your question? What is a content management system? What's the answer? There's the answer. And so it is teeing up that content and telling the LLM what it means. Happily, if you're on Webflow, thank you for the partnership. Glad you are. We auto-generate this. We will crawl your page, figure out which of the hundreds of types of schema there are that are right, slot in the content that today, I don't know of any other CMS that is doing that. I'm sure at some point there will be. By the way, we will also help you with other signals of structure and meaning, auto-generating SEO metadata, auto-generating accessibility information, right? All text on images is hugely valuable. Auto-generate sitemap.xml, support for LLMs.txt. We were the first CMS to support an MCP if you wanted to do this in that way. But to your point, this is that. And one of the reasons I individually was so fired up when the product team decided to auto-generate schema is, to me, it is one of the places in marketing where you must have a developer and you must have a marketer working together at the same time. They cannot do this on their own, neither one. And getting them both to talk with sprint cycles and everything, it's almost impossible. Now to empower the marketer to go run, I think it's great as an individual fellow marketer.
Yeah, I gotta give a shout out to our data engineer, Fernando, who helped us a lot with the back end of our site and figuring out all of this and helping clients now too. But it's great that you can, you guys are making it easier for everyone to educate themselves and just take that extra step, a little bit further down the path instead of starting from like a feeling it's too difficult to even start.
Yeah. Oh, auto-generate schema with Webflow. That's music to my ears. Even on like setting up ads on the conversion side, I have instances where I've got to send, pixel code to a developer, and I know they're super busy and it's not their top priority and they might have questions and I can't fully see what they're looking at. They can't see. So to be able to have a little more control for the marketer and simplicity is is awesome. So that's amazing. I didn't realize that. Super cool.
And the intent very much is the developer can go in and make as much or as few changes as they want. This isn't no developer. This is developer optional. And you've got then the guardrails to say, I'm not going to break the site technically if I do this. And if my developer wants to get in, he or she can go change to their heart's content. They could do it from scratch if they wanted to. This is more about empowering than excluding.
I have a quick selfish question, because I haven't seen or like heard about if this is actually effective or not. And then we definitely need to talk about the other two categories, authority and measurement, to round us out, Guy. But before we do, I have a quick question. So you just talked about the product pages and how important those are, and of course schema and all this kind of technical backend. What about other pages on the site, such as an about page or an author page on the blog? Like, is that helping to build more, like, one on the technical side, but also like I think this is leading into the authority question that we'll go into, and just building authority on your site? Because on Aimtel's website, for example, like our about page is like our second top performing page, actually. And I'm curious if that's something that's you guys are seeing at Webflow, or something you're recommending, or this kind of certain pages that kind of hit on a few different areas of success with AEO.
The data I've seen is yes, very much so, from two different lenses.
Okay.
One is, you said it, it's your second most trafficked page. So wherever those pages are, if they're helping people through your journey, go lean into them, right? Use those as the first places to go invest more. And the other one is, exactly to your point about authority, the LLMs are weighting EAT a bunch. And for those listening that sounds like food, I mean, Google's made up system or criteria for saying, you've got the right to talk about that. I don't actually mean the right, but like EAT is experience, expertise, authority, and trust. If you have those four things, they're going to reward you for that. To make up an example, if HubSpot is talking about how to grow in your career, they'll get less rewarded than if they're talking about CRM, because they have EAT, all four of those things. And so when you do a bio page, as you were talking about, that's a great way to signal EAT. In fact, people who put up blog posts that have no link to or bio on them, you're giving up the chance to demonstrate EAT.
And then backlink that on the other page as well, like to the content that you have or on other channels. Okay. I got the time. We gotta ask. We gotta find out. But I think that segues us well into authority overall then, right? That's what you're saying.
It very much does. Can I add one last small point on technical?
Yes, go for it. Yeah, of course. I feel like we could talk for like another hour on technical, but we gotta
totally good. I think it's to our point, collective point at the beginning about all of us learning. I think the highest level of maturity on technical is actually bobbing and weaving as the world changes. Like the early days of search 20 years ago, things are changing super rapidly. And so maybe it's MCP, maybe it's LLMs.txt. We support LLMs.txt. There is zero evidence that the LLMs themselves respect it today. They've said they don't.
Yeah.
So I hear sometimes people saying that should be your top priority. With humbly submitted, I don't think so at all. I think it should be on your list, but it's a little more thought leadership, future-proofing than it is the core like schema they're using all the time. And so I think at the highest level of technical maturity, you've got all these foundations in place. They're working well at scale. And now you're saying, all right, which of these emerging standards, rather than the widely accepted standards like schema, am I going to spend time on? Does that land for you?
Right. It's like, yeah, definitely. It's like, this is exactly how we're seeing it too, is like, you need to think about like, how are you building those topical relationships, then to like the content hierarchy, that leads into the topic authority, and then you're providing that like semantic proximity to the LLM. Like that's what they care about, to understand how it all relates. But they're not like, you need to think of the whole kind of, we think of it still, I think the traditional SEO is coming back with like the hub and spoke model of building your keywords and questions. And that's what's actually kind of cool, because you're like, that what we were doing years ago actually was what we need to just keep doing. We shouldn't have changed that. So definitely lands. And we're seeing a lot of that, of just kind of focusing in those areas is where to go, instead of I think we're sharing these like quick hit tactics, but yes, I definitely have seen that too with the LLM like text files, of people just wanting to like put that in and be like, okay, we're done with this. It's like, no. That's actually probably one of the last things you should do. And even maybe I agree with you, actually, we're not even advising clients to go right into that right away. It's like, what is the content strategy? How is this all, is there like a hierarchy here? Does it make sense for the human and the machine? No? Okay, let's make sure. The other thing we're seeing is that there's a lot of like flat architecture right now across like clients' websites. So that alone, like again, I just was explaining this before, like visually, the site looks like it's all organized, but it's actually not. And then they're realizing they're missing out on a lot of conversations. So, okay, so let's like double click into this then on the authority side, because we're touching on it, but I'd love to hear a little bit deeper of kind of what does this look like from your website? We already talked about some backlinking, but like then broader, because, it's not just your website, that's the whole, digital universe that your brand needs to be across and like what that looks like. So I'd love to kind of hear what you're seeing, what you recommend, Guy, and we can share a little bit of, you mentioned YouTube, video content, a range of content, so we can share some ideas around that as well.
Sounds awesome. And being thoughtful to time, I'll be a little less deep than we all had the energy and enthusiasm around content and technical. On authority, I think we go from backlinks, which still matter. Do not stop investing in them. To the LLMs incrementally value more plain text mentions on other sites because they're kind of looking for consensus. They're looking to see this mentioned over and over again, links optional. It's kind of like every one of those mentions is like you teaching your kids something. Every mention is another repetition. And so they're more likely to remember it and say, yep, that's the thing. So digital PR is back, doing webinars like this, or podcasts, or blog posts. Having your executives go out and speak and is one great way. Going to the LLM and say, here are answers for questions I care about. Here were the sites that were cited. What content did they have? Do I want to create some of that on my site? Do I want to be asked? Do I want to ask them to mention me on their site? The LLMs have also said, hey, we value authentic human content in the sense that it's less marketing speak. They have said, hey, video is one way to do that. A lot of people have talked about Reddit as another source for that. We could have a whole long discussion on that. It is a place to tread carefully because marketing speak is death there. And then you build up authority with having more authoritative content. Original research is great. And finally, to your point about visuals, you want all that pointing to a visually stunning, engaging site. Why? Because the LLMs can see, is your content authoritative? Did you bounce back to them once they referred you? In fairness, Google search can see that. And then because they have browsers where they're running the LLMs in them, they can see, did you stay on the site? Did you engage with the site? They can see, and they have more signals there, all as part of establishing authority. Forgive me, the one last thing I'll share on this is because they're running searches almost every query, you can have an impact tomorrow. I don't mean metaphorically tomorrow. I mean literally tomorrow, where, with SEO, we were all used to, okay, I made some changes. I need to wait a month or two. I need to get all the backlinks. I need to build the authority that way. Here, you can have an impact so much more quickly. Upside. Downside of that very same thing is, I know it doesn't apply to any of our listeners here, but if you might have some outdated content on your site, that sticks with you longer, right? Mm-hmm. If someone else has outdated content, if you change your positioning, that old outdated stuff is going to stick around longer. How does all that land for both of you?
Really well, because a lot to think about. I mean, so I love the word consensus here, because if I'm hearing you right, Guy, it's like used to be in the days of yore, you search something in Google and then you're getting served a series of websites that just trying to do pattern matching based off of like, let me give you the closest website that is giving you the answer that you want. But now it kind of sounds like what you're saying is that the LLMs are going out across the entire internet and scouring it to try to gather up a consensus of what the right answers are, and even a consensus about your brand. So it sounds like you really need to be showing up in a lot of different places in order for them to really gather consensus about you. And then I think what I also heard you say is that like LLMs aren't just looking at your site and what's on there, but they're looking at how many people are going there? Does it seem like when people go there, they're having a really good quality experience, and then they're using that to weigh and decide whether your site or the different places where you're mentored are actually valuable? Is that kind of the right way of thinking it, what you're kind of saying?
Yes, and I'd put to put a finer point on it. They trained on the whole internet, okay, but they are going and literally running searches, and they do this. You may all know this well. Query fan out, where you say one thing, and they're going to be like, "Hey, what are the 5, 10, 15, 20 different ways somebody could ask that?" They run a search on those. They bring that back. They then run that through the LLM as if you had like copied and pasted that into your initial query. And then they synthesize an answer from that. So practically, like technically it's over the whole internet because they pre-trained on that, but practically it's over the search results for things related to the query the person asked. And on them looking at the site, to be precise, I don't think they have evidence about how many people visited your site because they're in the browser. And two, I am hypothesizing that they are going to use that browser data. I haven't read their TOS to see can they.
Right.
It seems logical that they could.
Right.
And again, the only ones that have it are OpenAI and Perplexity. But like, it was more a point of the quality of your site. It really does have an impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, of just like what you're saying too, is like when an LLM does a search, it's kind of looking at the way someone might ask a question multiple different ways, which I think further cements the idea of you need to be showing up in a lot of different places, digital PR, social platforms, and people are going to have slightly different ways of having those conversations to talk about your brand. But that's actually a good thing because that's the way that the LLMs are looking to kind of find out more information. Jenna, I feel like you have a lot.
My metaphor on this is we need to, instead of just leading the horse to water, we need to meet the horse where it's thirsty. That's how I think about it. Like that, you need to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
And then, lead the horse back again. Like that's the rudimentary way I think I'm thinking about it. And we're definitely seeing now with clients, like they create videos, they connect it to their blog, they're making these connections, backlinking the content, sharing across channels, amplifying that. And they're coming up in the searches, like for the questions, like people are searching the questions, technical questions, and that content continues to be some of the first answer to those questions. So it does work. It definitely works. Awesome. Okay, we can talk forever. I do want to just move us quickly. We could round out with a couple final maybe examples, but also just round out with our final call to actions after this. But I do want to touch on measurement because I feel like this is an area that is fairly fuzzy and almost as if like just buy this product and then you have it all figured out. But as marketers and when you have data engineers and technical people you can work with, like, we want to know the mechanics of this. Like what should we actually be measuring? Like what matters, what doesn't matter? Like how often should we be measuring this? So I was curious, Guy, if you want to kind of like give us some quick hits of how you guys are thinking about this. And also like just you guys are clearly, you've already demonstrated that you're tracking the performance of your AEO optimization. So I'd love to just spend a few minutes here before we round out.
A quick lens. I think we all go from picking a basket of keywords and seeing how we rank for them. There's no concept of rank when you've got a paragraph coming back rather than 10 links to our content. So you pick a basket of questions that you want to be the answers to, and you say, did I show up? Was I mentioned in those? And then you mature to, all right, well, for that set of questions I care about, how often am I showing up relative to the competitors I care about? You go to share a voice. And then another set of concepts that don't exist at all in search. When I showed up, what was the sentiment? What was my message pull through? Was it accurate? Because everything is being resynthesized. You would buy tools like Profound or Scrunch or others to do that.
Yeah, you shared like a nice slide that like shows a ton of the products. Like,
here's a bunch of them. Yeah, neither endorsement nor dinging on any of them. This is an Andreessen slide, but it's a good list. The one other thing I would add is before all of that, we find, and I agree with folks starting with, I'm going to use my existing analytics system. I want to see how much traffic am I getting from the LLMs and how's it converting. If this isn't much, much higher, the conversion rate, check, something might be up. And this almost certainly is low and growing rapidly. So when folks are like, I should drop all SEO, I should do AEO. First, we all disagree that SEO is separate, totally different.
Right.
But second, the amount of energy you put into AEO, if it's like 0.001% of your traffic, that's different than if it's like 8% of your signups.
Right. Okay. And then on the website side are like kind of like quote unquote traditional metrics to track, like traffic, page views, even like position tracking, performance of your site. Is that still relevant? Like that's not changing. It's just even more important, it sounds like.
Couldn't agree with you more. Like ultimately the core job is the same. You get somebody to your website and you get them to take a set of actions to either buy or enter the pipeline. And hopefully your existing tools can help you do that effectively and separate out LLM source traffic from other traffic, because as traffic is going down for most of us, I think many SEOs spent the past decade saying traffic up, that's good. Traffic down may not be bad right now. As behavior is changing so rapidly, you get less traffic, but you've got this new source that's more qualified. And so I feel like there's going to be a few years of let's de-average those and separate out non-LLM from LLM. And then when it's like steady state and everybody's behaving the same, then we should go to where we are with search today, which is it should just only go up and to the right.
Right. I think that this is an entire other segment, but understanding that quality just proves how important it is to have these strong cross-functional relationships in your organization, like with sales, with product teams. Like, okay, once they're working with this information, these people, like, what is the quality of having that kind of closed, like that loop of feedback loop, really, of just not only looking at the data, but actually what is that quality? Because like you just said, Guy, the traffic may be down, but it's you guys are already seeing it's really high quality. We're starting to see that. So it's like, okay, this is great. Actually, it's saving us a ton of time, because we're much further along the conversation. So we love to hear it. So we've had Guy for almost and plenty of time. We're so happy to have you, Guy. I know that you also have a maturity model of AEO that Webflow developed. Do you want to quickly kind of run us through that briefly and just share how folks could kind of assess themselves? We did this in
60 seconds.
I think. All right, let's do it. You're gonna do your quick pitch.
So we took those 4 categories, which we think are the right way to think about this and divide up your work. We made up 5 different levels of maturity. And on the next slide, we arrayed those 4 categories against those 5 levels, so that to create this, which we hope is actionable, useful in structuring your work, in setting expectations around the org. This is explicitly from already good SEO, getting to great AEO. There's a lot here. What we did then to help on the next slide, if you go to webflow.com/AEO or scan this QR code, you'll see that framework. And then you could put in your domain name and we'll run a dozen agents, 1,700 lines of prompts that will look at your site, look off your site, assess against that rubric, that whole table on the previous page, and share with you, here's what we saw. Here are the gaps we see to get to the next level. Here are the things we suggest doing. No pitch, just genuinely helpful. Caveat, it's LLM. Sometimes they get it wrong, but generally it's a very helpful tool to start and have conversations internally about what we should do next.
I would say it's a mini confidence boost too, because you might get assessed, but there are going to be aspects of your site or content that's doing well, and Webflow communicates it to you. Their LLMs say it in a really motivating way. I liked when we read ours, and I was like, oh, thanks guys. Yeah, we did do that. We do talk to our clients and make it really clear. We appreciate you. So,
I'm glad that landed. In the first versions of it didn't do that. We were like, no, we need to acknowledge the progress and say what to do, not just this part.
All right. See, experimentation, people. You're hearing it live. Well, thank you, Guy, for joining us. So every episode, we like to conclude with one call to action. I'm gonna start with Tucker. Then Tucker, you can ask Guy, or you can ask me, and then we can close it out with Guy. So after this fabulous conversation, we've learned a lot. I feel like Guy shared some stuff that he hasn't even shared before. So like there's a lot here that for folks to take away. But what's your one call to action for the audience, Tucker?
Well, I love even just talking about AEO content and hearing from you, Guy, that shift from thinking about going after keywords to going after questions. And you said something in the middle of this episode that I really liked, which is you need to start thinking about that bucket or basket of questions that you really want to rank for and start anchoring around. So I would encourage folks, like my call to action is, start identifying, coming up with a list of those questions that you want your website and your brand to really be ranking for and be answering, and start thinking, okay, am I answering that? I love that. Yeah. What's your basket of questions, So that's my call to action. Janet, I'll pop it over to you.
Okay, mine's going to be, so Guy shared earlier in the episode how there's a disconnect between marketing leaders know that they need to, this is going to be really important for AEO. They need a plan strategy, but their practitioners are not fully understanding and are ready to implement this. So mine would be start to create the plan, create the strategy, and then also equip your teams with the resources, the training, the knowledge, the agencies, the technology like Webflow and other resources that are out there to start to make moves on this in 2026. I think that if you're not even planning this or taking action on it, you're going to be even further behind. So that's why we're sharing this forward. So make the plan, put into action is mine. All right, Guy, you want to round us out? What is your one call to action, today's discussion for the audience?
This has been awesome. It's been great learning with you, talking with you, sharing as we're all learning in this space. If you'll allow me, I'm going to do two. One is go to webflow.com/AEO, not because there's a pitch there, but because it is a way to go get your site assessed and have the conversation internally so you can make the plan and then go execute the plan so that you can shift your thinking to questions. And two, in the absence of all of that, if you need to summarize to somebody else, hey, look, if we only did two things for AEO, make it answering questions and adding schema.
Love it. All right, folks, you've heard it first here, heard it again. If you've been thinking about it, it's time to implement. So we'd love to hear from you, our viewers, as well. Have you started implementing AEO optimizations to your website, content strategy? What are you seeing? As we shared, we're all figuring this out together. Sharing the knowledge is how we're successful. So please, drop some comments, reach out to us on LinkedIn, and definitely be sure to subscribe, follow Webflow as well to stay informed. They're definitely ahead of all of this. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Guy, for joining us. Such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really was. So we'll see you until next time. Thanks, everyone.